Hello everyone, how's everybody doing? Let's get right to it. Let me first explain. Let me explain what happened the other day first. I got shut down. No conspiracy, no one hacked me. What happened was about, I guess, 2 weeks ago, I had a visit by Telecom. They sold me a new package, internet package. I decided to go for it because it was twice as fast, same price, but twice as fast. I said, what the hell, let's do it. And just when I was giving my lecture, that's when they shut me off and they said, okay, turn it on, Bill. And so I spent 1 hour reconfiguring everything, and by then it was too late. Anyways, that's what happened. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. And another issue is that I want to talk about is that I postponed the chronological part of the universe, how it came to be and so on, how Father Universe grew up to be a teenager that he is today. I'm going to leave that for Sunday, and for two reasons. One is that the subject matter I'm going to touch upon today, kind of precedes that or serves as a foundation for that. And the other one is that I had one of my Patreon supporters abandon me. Apparently, I offended him. You could say that I misrepresented his religion. And yeah, what happens is a lot of people who have known me for a while, even those people who know me for a while, you know, they don't agree with everything I say, obviously. You know, we all have different ideas, different opinions about things. We also have different theories for different things. I have people who like the rope model, but they don't like my extinction model. Fine, that's everybody's got their own conclusions, okay? But a lot of people come here and they say, oh, Bill's talking against the establishment, the mathematical establishment. I like that. You know, you got people like the Electric Universe, Etherists from the John Chappell Society, and others, you know, followers of Ken Wheeler and other people out there. And they say, oh, I like what this guy is saying because he's attacking the establishment. He's against space-time. He's against black holes and dark matter and all that stuff. And so they like that. And they also like the fact that some of them, that I attack atheism. They say, oh, he's one of ours. He's a born-again Christian, perhaps, or fundamentalist or whatever. And so the answer is no. We have a different site here. And our site is different from everyone else in the planet because we're the only ones who propose extended entities. Okay? Everybody else proposes particles, discrete particles. Whether you do waves, vortices, plasma, whatever you're doing particles. Okay? And we're the only site that says, forget about particles, discrete particles. We have elongated entities, they interconnect all atoms in the universe. So we have a totally different site. And also, as part of that, we had to create foundations for physics. Okay? The foundations of physics has to do with a language. You know, you have to define the terms that you're going to use in physics. And that's a little bit of what I'm going to talk about today. And it involves this fellow named God. Okay? And so the issue is that is constantly debated also between atheists and deists and agnostics is, what is God? Does God exist? And I want to address that kind of question today because in traditional religions, God is supposed to be the creator of the universe, in many of them, okay, in several of them at least, okay? And so we need to find out what God is. Does this God exist? And did this God create the universe? And that's going to be like the introduction for what I'm going to do on Sunday, okay? So that's the setup. That's what I'm going to talk about today. One of the things that the reason, you know, I fight against mathematical physics and atheists is because they are irrational. They only propose irrational theories. They follow an irrational method, which they call the scientific method, and they claim to be doing science. No, they don't do science. They do religion, and their so-called scientific method is a religious method. Okay, and there's a difference between traditional religions and what the mathematicians do, or people who stand up, you know, for them. The traditional religions, what they do is known as supernatural. What these people do is known as irrational. Okay, and there's a difference between supernatural and irrational. Okay, so let's get into that first. Okay, so we separate black from white. Okay, let's clarify that. Here's irrational. Okay, this is the definition we're going to use here. These are the criteria we're going to use to determine what is irrational. Everybody likes to think of himself as, oh, I'm rational, and you're not. Everybody, but that's an opinion. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by irrational? So we have to clarify what irrational refers to. Okay, and here it is. These are the criteria. The main one, the first one, treating concepts as objects, reification, concretization. You move a mass. You transfer energy. You bend time. We can't do that to concepts, especially in physics. We're going to talk about physics. We can't do those kinds of things. Those are irrational proposals. You can't talk like that in physics. Okay, and people might say, well, I meant this other thing. Well, whatever you meant, do that one. Don't say that you bend time, or that you transferred energy or information, or that you moved a mass, or that you stretched the field. No such monsters in physics. Those are all concepts, and you can't give a physical interpretation and say that that's what you did in the lab, that you stretched a field, okay, or that you vibrated a field. No such monster. There's no such thing as a field. Field means something else. Field is a concept. It's a mathematical concept. Means a value at each point in space. Okay, that's what it means. And you can't say a value at each point in space, I'm going to stretch them. Okay, so as soon as you convert it into the field into a physical object, that's when you become irrational. Your whole theory goes down the drain. Okay, because that is not a mechanism. That's the issue. Using inconsistent definitions or undefined words. Okay, the theory doesn't follow from the hypothesis. You make an assumption, and then your theory has nothing to do with that assumption. Okay, describing and claiming to have explained, constantly being done by mathematicians. They say, I've explained. No, mathematics cannot explain anything. Mathematics can only describe. It's a descriptive language and nothing more. Okay, and then the last one, mechanism proposed doesn't work or cannot even be imagined. Okay, so those are the criteria for irrationality. Those are objective criteria. If you don't like them, all you got to do is define rationality or irrationality and tell us what you mean by that word. Okay. Okay. Let me do a little bit of house cleaning here. Okay. Okay. And so here are examples. This is supernatural. According to traditional religions, this is why they're supernatural. What does supernatural mean? It means that you can imagine the mediators. You can imagine the actors that are going to play a role in your theory. What you cannot imagine is the mechanism. Okay? And so here are some famous mechanisms that are used by traditional religions usually. God creating the world. How does God create something from nothing? What is the mechanism? And yeah, you have to do it with hocus pocus. That's the only way. Black magic. Angels in heaven, playing the harp. No, I don't think so. No such monster as heaven, no such monster as angels. Okay? The devil in hell, it's evil. Jesus ascending, coming back in 3 days, going back, what is this? Traveling, the Purdy Gate, transit system. So, no, those are, you can imagine the objects. You can imagine hell, you can imagine fire, you can imagine clouds, you can imagine angels. All those are objects. An angel is an object. Fire not, but an angel is an object. Okay, and people don't understand that. They say, no, an angel is a concept. No, it's not a concept. Not in physics. In ordinary speech, it might be a concept because they never define the word concept. In physics, an angel you can point to. And we're going to do that today. In fact, there were some questions later on by some people, and I'm going to address those. An angel is an object, physical object, for the purposes of physics. Okay, so you have no problem introducing God, if it's that guy over there, or an angel. No problem. The devil, also a physical object. No such concept as a devil in science. He's an object. Okay, you can point to a devil, you can point to an angel, you can point to God if God is that thing there. Okay, you can point to Jesus Christ. Okay, also, maybe even to his ghost. Okay, so that's what supernatural means. You can imagine the objects. You can even point to them. You can draw them. You cannot imagine the mechanism by which the event happened. That's where the problem is. Okay. And this is irrational. This is what mathematical physics does in comparison. We call this irrational. Okay, what do? Well, they treat energy as a thing. They transfer energy. What do you mean you transferred energy? There's no such physical object as energy in science. What does it look like? What is the shape of energy? Okay, that's the issue. Then they have the tesseract. And the tesseract, one of the legs is time. And here they're rotating time. They're rotating the whole thing, the whole test, right? They say that's an object. Okay, what is it made of? It's made of time. So what they're doing is moving time around. And then you have here, traveling through a wormhole. Okay, and what is a wormhole? Well, it's Einstein-Rosen bridge. That's what it's called in physics. And what is that? That's an equation. So what they're doing is they're traveling through an equation. Whenever they tell you they go through a wormhole. Okay. And then, of course, you have all these fields: magnetic, electric, gravitational, vector field, etc. And what they do is, you can see they're moving them around. They're moving these concepts around, these vectors, these number lines, and all that is irrational. Okay, so this is the problem. The problem is that these people are treating these concepts as physical objects. Okay, and okay, so the issue is the following. We need to know if for the purpose of today, right? We need to know if God created the universe as traditional religions say, or there is no such thing as God as the mathematicians usually say. Most mathematicians do not believe in God. They claim to be atheists, okay? And so they say there is no such thing as God out there, okay? So we have these two positions. We need to know first if God exists, what we mean by exist, and if it's what we say exist meaning that it's an object that has location. We need to find out if God is an object. Otherwise, God doesn't exist by definition, because the definition of exist demands an object. That's the issue. And the problem with, at least what I'm going to analyze today, Christianity, is that you have two versions, and they both come from the same book, from the Bible, the Holy Book. And in one case, you have the Old Testament, and then you have the New Testament, and we have two different kinds of gods in there. Those gods don't match. They're not even similar. In the Old Testament, it's very clear. And that's the God I like personally, because that's an object. That's a thing. In the New Testament, God became a concept. Suddenly, he morphed into a concept. He's an abstraction. So people start praying to abstractions. Okay? That's what I want to show. And what is the problem with that? Well, the problem first is that if you can't agree with both of them. You can't agree with the Old Testament and the New Testament and say, well, I like this guy over here. I like the New Testament, for example. If you do, then you have to get rid of the Old Testament. You have to chop that book completely out of the Bible, okay, because it's a different God that you're praying to or that you're imagining or whatever. Okay, so I want to go over the God of the Old Testament and show that God, if that's the God that wrote the Bible, he's the author, or alleged to be the author of the Bible. He's the guy who guided man's hands when they wrote the Bible for us. If that God is telling us, is giving us his own testimony, then God, no doubt about it, is a physical object. And you cannot say, this is, well, Bill, that's your interpretation. No, this is not about interpretation. Here's God telling you in your face that he is a physical object. He looks exactly like humans, and he's got all the features of humans and all the properties, all the attributes that humans have. So there is no mistaking. This is not an issue of interpretation. The God of the Old Testament is very clear. He's a physical object, and he's more than that. He's human. Okay? He doesn't look like a cow. He doesn't look like a tree. He doesn't look like a rock. He looks and is like a human. And here are the testimonies. This comes directly from the Bible, so I don't know what you can interpret out of these, okay? And that's what I want to show, that it's straightforward, okay? Here's the first testimony, if I can get them up here. Give me a second here. Okay. This is just the difference between whether God is an object or whether God is a concept. We need to determine which of these two God is, okay? But here it is, okay? First clue that God gives us. This is out of his good book. Said God has the appearance of a human. Okay, why? Here you see it in Genesis 1:26 and 1:27. God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion." Blah 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 blah. And he continues. And then the second paragraph there says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them." What part did you not understand? Do you think God looks like a cow or a snake or a tree or a what do you think he looks like? He's telling you he looks like us. Looks like a human. So I'm not sure what other interpretation you can give that. Okay, you might want to say, well, that's not the God I believe in. Well, then you don't believe in the Old Testament. Well, why do you have it inside your Bible? Rip it off. If you don't believe in the Old Testament, you don't believe God's own word telling you in your face that he looks like a human, then you got a problem. You got a problem because you don't believe in the God of the Bible. Okay, so it's your interpretation which is at stake here, okay? Okay, let's continue. Let's see more testimony. This is all God's own testimony. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. He's going to put them in his own mouth, okay? Here's God, and we're going to build them piece by piece. God has a face and God has eyes. For mine eyes are upon all their ways. So he does have eyes. He's not a rock. He's not a tree or a plant, okay? He's got eyes. As far as I know, maybe all animals or most animals have eyes, okay? So he's some kind of animal at least, okay? And so I put eyes there, and he's also got a face. They are not hid from my face. So God has a face and God has eyes. He's telling you, okay? I mean, if he's the author of the Bible, if he guided the pen of all these people, he's telling you he's got a face, he's got eyes. Neither is there iniquity hid from mine eyes. I will hide mine eyes from you, Isaiah, and his eyes behold, his eyelids try. He's got eyelids as well, okay? So he's got eyes, face, eyelids. What part did you not understand? So again, these are things that you got to keep in mind, especially, and this is, if you're a Christian, you should look at this and test yourself. You might say, well, that's not the God I believe in. Again, then you don't believe in the God of the Bible. Rip the Old Testament out because God is telling you in your face what he looks like in general terms, okay? He looks like a man, he's got eyes, he's got a face. What else does God have? And again, he's telling you all this in the book. And there are many, I just pulled a few references here. There are many more references for parts of the body that God has, okay? Thou wilt cause this, thine ear to hear, okay? So someone's saying that God has ears. And if God guided his pen, well, I mean, God is giving you his own testimony. My cry came before him, even into his ear. So God has ears. I put a couple ears there on the fellow, okay? So far we have face, we have eyes, eyelids, now we have ears, okay? Let's continue here. Let's make sure we cover all the body parts that suggest that God is a physical object here. God says, and let me pull this down a little bit. And with the blast of thy nostrils, it's got nose holes, right? It's got nostrils. The waters were gathered together. That's in Exodus, okay? So what are you? I hope you're keeping track of all the things that God has, okay? You can't say, well, God didn't tell us. No, he is telling you. He's telling you he's got all these parts. Here's an eye, he's got a mouth, okay? There went up a smoke out of his nostrils again, and fire out of his mouth, okay? Does God have a mouth? Well, hopefully. I mean, he says he's human-like, or he's telling us that, he's like a human. He's got eyes, he's got eyelids, he's got a face, he's got a nose, he's got a mouth. I don't know. Well, he's describing some kind of animal, for sure. Okay? At least. That much we can be sure of. He's not describing a plant or a mineral or whatever, a rock. Okay, here's another. He says, God has hands. Okay? Therefore will I stretch out my hand. So he stretches out his hand, okay? Against them and destroy thee. And God has legs also. The Lord God walking in the garden. What would he be walking on? Stilts? I mean, he's got to have legs. Okay, so, this notion that we don't know what God is or looks like or whatever, it's clear. I mean, God is telling you in all these parts of the Bible that he's got all these body parts just like us, and he's telling you in your face that he looks like us, he made us in his image. So what part don't you understand? Well, what is so difficult? Why interpret something that needs no interpretation? Okay, and here's a couple more. Okay, so we cover all his parts. His eyes are upon the ways of man, and he seeth all his goings. So God sees because he's got eyes, okay? And let's see what else, what other magic tricks God can do. Well, God can also hear. Here it is. From his temple he heard my voice. And, oh Lord, in the morning you hear my voice. Okay, so I think it's straightforward. God hears. So the other section said that he hears, and this one says that he has ears, and this one says he hears. Okay, so I don't know. I think it's straightforward. Okay, and what does he use his nose for? He uses to smell. So it's a soothing aroma to the Lord. Okay, so I think it's straightforward. What God uses these body parts for, he uses them for the same things we use them. Okay, so again, straightforward. This is his own testimony. If he wrote the Bible, he's the author of the Bible through people who were influenced by him. Okay, God speaks. The Lord called unto Adam, and said, blah, 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 right? Unto him, where art thou? Okay. And the voice of God speaking out of the midst of the fire. God speaks. Okay, so God has a mouth. What does he use it for? Well, he probably uses it to eat, but obviously he uses it to speak. Okay, and then again, God walks. The Lord God walking in the garden. I guess he does it with legs. I don't know, maybe he's a centipede. You could argue that, but he walks. You could say he crawls also. I don't know, but God walks, talks, and if it walks and talks like a duck, it is a duck, right? Okay, and what does he use his hands for? Well, he uses to touch. The Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth. Right? What part didn't you understand? So God can touch. Okay, he's got hands. What does he use them for? Well, among other things, to touch. So all this is straightforward. Okay, so we have all the body parts. We have all the uses for all these body parts, which are exactly like ours. And on top of it, he tells you that he made us in his image. So I don't know what anyone could say against it. This is God's own testimony. If you don't agree with all that, then you don't agree with the Old Testament. You should throw it away, because these passages are throughout the Old Testament. It's not in one book alone. You say, well, I'll get rid of Genesis or whatever. You got to get rid of the whole book, because the whole Old Testament book, because the whole thing is full of these things. I just pulled out some here and there. And if you say, well, I have a different interpretation for that, well, there's nothing to interpret. This is straightforward. And the problem I've got with interpreting the Bible, I think we should read it literally, just like you would read any other book. There's no reason to interpret it. But if you interpret it, I have to propose, or I have to think that the devil is in you. Because if you interpret the Bible and the other guy interprets the Bible and the other guy interprets the Bible, everybody interprets the Bible the way he wants to, according to his own way of thinking, then we have 8 billion religions on the planet, because everybody's got his own way of interpreting things. And you would think that if there is the supreme being out there, he would not have done that. He would have made it as clear as possible so that everybody interprets the same thing. If there is confusion, I would have to think that that's from the devil. Right? The devil sows confusion. God sows only understanding. You would think. I mean, right? This is a supreme being that's out there. He's a good fellow, and what is he going to do? He's going to try to make that everybody interprets the same thing. So there should be no interpretation. The Bible should be read literally. And yeah, that kills a lot of religions, especially people today who are Christians. They say, well, I don't believe in that God that has a magic wand. That's the God of the Old Testament. That's the one you don't believe in. But that's the one that's in the Bible that you swear by when you're in court, and that you pray to and whatever, and get information out of. So, you got a contradiction. Yeah, that's what it is. So God is clear. God is a physical object according to the Old Testament. Now, there is one exception, and it's apparently that God is also a vegetable. Okay? He's some kind of vegetable. He's some kind of plant. Okay? Because there's a paragraph that says, or a section says, the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. Well, one of the two. Either God's fire or God's the bush. Okay? And so, I don't know. They continue saying that the bush burned without really getting, carbonized. So I don't know if you want to interpret that as God being the bush or God being the fire. Okay? His voice came out of that event. Okay? That phenomenon. And so I don't know. I think that God in that case is some kind of flame, but you could just as well think that God was the bush. Okay, that's really not clear. You would think God would have been clearer there. Anyways, you might say, well, all that's what they believed in those days. Yeah, true. It's true. It's what they believed in those days, because what's happened since then, religion has changed. 2,000 years ago, people had a different notion of what God was, and they created the religions that are still alive today. There's an example which I always criticize, and that's about Buddhists. And Buddhists say, well, we don't have a God. Well, I say that they're liars, or they're ignorant. Buddhists do have gods. Okay, and here's proof. Okay, here's proof that Buddhists have gods. Okay, this is out of their good book. Okay. And it says, in Buddhism, a deva is one of many different types of non-human beings who share the God-like characteristics of being more powerful, longer-lived, and in general, much happier than humans. So they're not humans, okay? And these guys are around, Okay? Buddhist texts refer to similar supernatural beings as Devata, okay, divinity, or Devapura, or Para, son of God. While the former is a synonym for Deva or deity, the latter refers specifically to one of these beings who is young and has newly arisen in the heavenly world. Heavenly world? What are they talking about? Well, it looks like they're talking about gods and something out there in heaven. Okay? Deva is the Buddhist and Hindu term for what? For deity. So what is Deva? Deva means God. Okay? So all these things come from their book, their good book, the Pali Canon. Okay? Devata is a smaller, more focused Deva. Okay? And you can see all kinds. You can read the rest of it there. Devapatra, Mara was the king of all the demons of this world. Mara is the embodiment of all unskillful emotions. Okay, and one person says Gautama Buddha placed his finger to the ground, and from the ground arose the goddess of the earth. And yeah, people might go over and over and say, well, you got to interpret these passages and so on. No, let's make it clear. People 2,000 years ago really believed in all these gods. The Greeks had their mythology. What was it? One god for every purpose. So they had the god of the wind, the god of the oceans, the god of fire, and so on. They had all these gods. That's how religion arose. They had no explanation because they were very ignorant people. Okay? Some people say, well, we lost all the knowledge. I like that because they really believe all these people knew a lot. They didn't know anything. They thought they were on a flat earth that was infinite because as far as they could walk, it was all flat. So they created this flat earth notion, or a lot of people probably believed it in those days. They didn't know what the moon and the sun were. They just kept rolling one at night, the other one in the day. And they said, what is that? What are these little blinking things in the sky, a night sky? They didn't know any of that. They had no idea what all that was. They didn't know where they were living. And they said, well, we're in the Garden of Eden. That's what it is. And so they created all these gods. And they created one god for every purpose. Christianity has, some of Christian, like the Catholics, they have the same thing. They have angels. What are angels? Angels are gods for every purpose. That's all it is. It's the same thing as Greek mythology, except that you have the angel Gabriel or Michael, and they come in for to do this or to do that. They're God's messengers. So, all religions had gods 2,000 years ago, okay? But religion has changed. And one of the things that changed, especially in Christianity, is that the God of the Old Testament, which was a physical object, God with hands and eyes and ears and so on, suddenly became an abstraction. Okay, and we see this. Here you have proof, evidence. Okay, here's one fellow, and he says the following. He says, John says, God is a spirit, meaning a soul, meaning conscience or whatever. And then in another chapter, another book says, God is love. No, that's a little different than the Old Testament. The Old Testament, here you have it. Let me show you the Old Testament, what God used to do, or the type of God people believed in before this came around. Maybe 2,500, 3,000 years ago, this is what people had. Thou shalt not kill. That's what God starts out. And then what he does is kill. It says, the Lord slew all his firstborn in the land of Egypt. When they shall know that I am the Lord, when I shall lay my vengeance upon them. He was a vengeful God. God is jealous, and the Lord revengeth. Ooh. The Lord revengeth and is furious. The Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies. Okay? God is angry with the wicked every day. So the God of the Old Testament is an SOB. He's not a nice guy. Okay? He's a guy that gets angry. He punishes. Okay? He's not the God of love that these people are talking about. And here you have a specific case. What God does, okay? He says, thou shalt not kill, and the first thing he does is kill. He says, and Judah's firstborn was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him, meaning killed him, okay? And Judah said unto Onan, who was his brother, right? Go in unto thy brother's wife and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his, and it came to pass when he went in unto his brother's wife that he spilled it on the ground, okay? Lest that he should give seed to his brother. And this thing which he did displeased the Lord, okay, wherefore he slew him also. So God killed a couple of guys for different reasons, okay? He says, thou shalt not kill, and the first thing he does is kill. Okay, so he doesn't follow his own commandment, I guess, but that's okay. I can understand that. I mean, maybe he's got a monopoly on murder, on killing. Okay, fine, I can understand that. But that's what my point here is that God of vengeance, of wrath, of punishment, that's not the God of the New Testament. The God of the New Testament has mellowed out over the years. He's become, I guess, old and senile or whatever, or he's become soft. And he's a God of love. He wants to embrace love. You know, it's the Romans who torture and crucify people. The Christians, we love you. We're all love and we're all brotherhood. So the God that started with the Old Testament, which was a God of vengeance who helped Israel, defeat its enemies, that guy changed when we get to the days of the Romans. And now, God is saying, no, let's all be brothers. Let's all love each other. So the God changes. And now God becomes this abstraction. And here you have one fellow today, a famous guy, a lot of you know him. His name is Deepak Chopra. And Deepak, he says, he defines God as intelligence. God is not love, God is not spirit, God is intelligence. And what is that specifically? Well, it says, when we speak of God, we are talking about consciousness. Consciousness. I love that word, consciousness, in which all experience occurs. What is consciousness? That which makes any experience possible. Okay? So this fellow says God is intelligence, God is consciousness. So is that what created the universe? I mean, here we're trying to figure out, how this universe came to be. And a lot of these people believe, they say, well, we're not against science, meaning mathematical physics, meaning that they agree with the Big Bang, that there was an origin to everything. And so you say, okay, how did it come into being? Well, the so-called mathematical science, or the mathematical physicists, they say it came to be by itself. There was this energy thingy, that came into being, suddenly exploded and turned into the Big Bang. And you say, well, where did the energy come from? Well, that came from the false vacuum. And what's the false vacuum? Well, that's the quantum foam. And they just keep giving you names, and you say, okay, where did all that come from? And that's where the buck stops. The buck stops there. They have no clue whatsoever how to create something from nothing. And they say, it's an unscientific question because we have no way of testing the hypothesis. That's the kind of answer you get. And so that's where the questioning ends, and you can pry no more, into that question. So we have a problem because both science, so-called science, mathematical physics, and religion, traditional religions, they have no explanation for how the universe came to be. In one case, they say, well, it was God who made the universe. And you say, okay, what is God? And they say, well, I don't know what God is because he's this unimaginable being or thing or whatever. Okay, what is a thing? God is telling you in the Old Testament, he's just like us. He's got eyes, ears, mouth, nose. He talks, he walks, he's got hands. It doesn't say anything about whether he's got hair or beard. That's why I didn't put that guy with hair or beard, right? So it's clear that God looks like us, like a human being. And when you put that to them, they say, well, that's your interpretation. No, it's in the book. It's in the good book. Yeah, it's straightforward. There's nothing to interpret. God is telling you in many passages, he's giving you lots of clues that God looks like a human being. He's got all the body parts of a human being. There's no reason to question any of that. If you question that, you got the devil in your body. Okay, so please don't question that God looks like us. Anyways, he can't be a concept and have created the universe, matter. Because then we have the same problem. How did God, assuming God's there eternally, I don't care, how does God create something from nothing? What is the mechanism? Hocus pocus, abracadabra, black magic, is that the mechanism? I mean, if you can't answer that question, you don't have a way of explaining how this universe came to be. You don't have a mechanism. You don't have a process. And so that's where that dies as well. So those are the questions that are pertinent when you have these debates between theists and atheists and agnostics and so on. They don't need to run around and chase their tails. They need to define the terms. They need to define what exist means, if we're going to talk about the existence of God. And you got to determine whether God is an object or a concept. And if God is a concept, you pray to a concept, and the concept created matter. If, on the other hand, God is an object, you can say, well, this object was eternal. It's always been there. Fine, great. How did he create matter? How did this thing called God, which the Old Testament says looks like us, how did he create matter in zero time, from one frame of the universe to the other frame of the universal movie, where you have nothing here and suddenly you have something? There's no way you can explain it. You cannot rationalize that. Not from nothing to something, and of course you would have to define what something and nothing is. And that's where the whole discussion should be. It should not move beyond that and say, well, what is your opinion? What do you think about this? No, we don't care about that. Be objective. Tell me if God is an object or a concept. That's the only issue. And if God is a concept, he could not have created the universe because he's not a he. It's an it. And concepts don't create objects. You cannot rationalize that. And then objects, if God is an object, he could not have created objects from nothing. He could not have created something from nothing. because you would have to explain the mechanism. And if you don't have a mechanism, and you certainly won't find it in the Bible, in the Old Testament or the New, then you don't have a mechanism. You can't say that God created the universe because you cannot rationalize it. Okay, and it would have been nice if God put the instructions, the spec on how he created the universe. It'd be nice. I mean, what was it? Just hocus pocus, abracadabra? Voila. Okay, so what are my conclusions? And this is again for people who go out there and have discussions with, whether you discuss with an atheist or a theist, it doesn't matter, because atheists are in the same boat. They talk about belief or non-belief in God. It's the same thing. The issue of existence has nothing to do with existence. Okay, belief has nothing to do with existence, and for this you have to define what the word exist means, and hopefully it doesn't include the word belief in the definition. Okay, so these are my final comments. You have to determine if God is an object or a concept. It's black or white. Either God has shape or God doesn't have shape, because those are the definitions of the word object. Then the Old Testament says God is an object. No doubt about it. Okay, there's no question about that. You might say, well, that's your interpretation. No, God is very straightforward. There's no reason to interpret any of those passages. He's telling you in your face that he looks like a human because he created us in his image, and he goes out of his way in many verses to tell you that he's got ears, nose, mouth, eyes, hands, feet, the whole works. New Testament, God converted into suddenly he became an abstraction. He became a concept. And today he's intelligence, which is beyond love and beyond spirit, ghost, and suddenly God became a different kind of concept. He became intelligence, consciousness, okay? So if God created matter, please explain the process. And hopefully it's not, all that matter did not come from a concept. So you can't say God is a concept, that for you, God is love, God is intelligence, God is consciousness. And you say, how did matter come into being? From consciousness? That's what they have to explain. You say, well, I can't explain that. And of course you can't, because it's an irrational proposal to say that matter came from an abstraction such as a concept. Okay, so that's the issue. Those are the only issues that anybody needs to discuss. And as long as you stick to that, you're going to put the other guy in a serious position. You just don't have to stray from those conclusions, from that line of questioning. Okay.